to the big story that we are breaking on Gravitas tonight. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been lauded for hard-selling India at the World Economic Forum in Davos, from wooing world leaders to reaching out to global CEOs to come and invest in India. And that's not breaking news. But yesterday, his political rival, Congress President Rahul Gandhi, tweeted a swipe at Prime Minister Modi, blaming him for the uneven distribution of wealth in the country. He began the tweet with a sarcastic "Welcome to Switzerland, Prime Minister." What Mr. Gandhi, in our opinion, should be doing is also brushing up on history and understanding a contrast. While Prime Minister Narendra Modi promoted India at the World Economic Forum, it turns out that a Congress minister attended the top meet in Davos to work against India's interest. The minister we're talking about is Madhav Singh Solanki, who was External Affairs Minister in the Narasimha Rao government in 1992. It's a story that isn't well known. It's a story that the current generation of Indians perhaps may not have heard of, and it's a story that must be revisited given this context. WION has accessed an affidavit, and the pictures are on your screen. This affidavit shows how the CBI, a premier investigating agency in India, sought the prosecution of Solanki for trying to scuttle the Bofors probe. No prizes for guessing why. Among the names facing the heat then was former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. This affidavit shows that during his official visit to Davos, Solanki sought a meeting with his Swiss counterpart, René Felber. The meeting was arranged during the annual World Economic Conference in 1992, something similar to what Prime Minister Modi just attended. Solanki requested that there should be no witnesses to the meeting. During this meeting, Solanki gave Felber a sealed envelope. He allegedly handed René Felber an unsigned and fabricated memorandum. The CBI says Solanki tried to interfere with the ongoing Bofors investigation. This affidavit further says that Solanki claimed he had new information about the Bofors case and wanted Felber to communicate that to the Swiss government. Felber allegedly told Solanki he was not responsible for justice matters, and soon enough, parts of the story made it to the papers in India. Solanki had to resign from the Narasimha Rao cabinet. That was in April 1992. He reportedly admitted in Parliament that he had delivered a memorandum to the Swiss minister. Remember, the Bofors payoff case was a major political scandal in India. Rajiv Gandhi and members of the Indian and Swedish government were accused of receiving kickbacks in a $1.4 billion deal between Swedish arms manufacturer Bofors with the government of India for the sale of 410 field howitzer guns and a supply contract almost twice that amount. And that's a lot of money given the time we're talking about, almost $1.5 billion. The Congress government signed an agreement with Swedish firm Bofors in 1986. Bofors was given an order for over 400 155mm howitzers. The supply order was worth $1.5 billion. In 1987, reports emerged claiming that Bofors paid kickbacks to Indian politicians. And in 1999, more than a decade later, the CBI named Rajiv Gandhi as one of the accused in the charge sheet. And I have a copy of that affidavit. And I can tell you in point number 2, it says, and I'm quoting, "The petitioner, who was the Minister of External Affairs in the Government of India, visited Davos, Switzerland in January-February 1992. This visit was for attending the annual World Economic Conference. It alleged that the petitioner, during the period of the conference, sought an appointment with the Swiss minister, Mr. René Felber, for a few minutes in a hotel and is said to have requested that there should be no witnesses." You should smell a rat there. It also alleged that this meeting, the petitioner gave an envelope containing, and I'm quoting, "an unsigned typed memorandum related to the matter of execution of the aforesaid letters rogatory to Mr. Felber." We are talking about the Bofors case. It also alleged that in his meeting with Felber, the petitioner said he had new information about the Bofors case, and it was important for Mr. Felber to communicate that to the Swiss government. Mr. Felber is said to have told the petitioner that he was not responsible for justice matters, but he could take the document and pass it on to the Federal Office of Justice. The CBI essentially is accusing the then minister of trying or having tried to scuttle the Bofors investigation. The question then is, what was inside that letter? What did the Congress government want to convey to the Swiss government? And these are the details that we've been able to access. As we know, the memorandum to René Felber was unsigned and handed over in a sealed envelope. The memorandum was allegedly a request for quote-unquote mutual assistance. It denied all allegations of kickbacks. It requested the Swiss government to refrain from taking further steps. Do not investigate, was the message. The Congress government wanted the Swiss government to wait until the investigations in India are completed. Now, here is what Madhav Solanki said in his defense in Parliament back in 1992, 26 years back. He told the lower house in India that the meeting was just a courtesy call. Remember, he requested his Swiss counterpart to make sure that there are no witnesses to their discussions. Solanki also told Parliament that what he handed to Felber was just a note. He claimed that the note was about the status of court cases pending in India. Joining us is Kanchan Gupta, senior journalist who's also been speaking about it, and Sumit Chaturvedi, my colleague who's been reporting for WION from Davos. Mr. Gupta, let me begin with you. This is a tale of two trips to Davos, as we are calling it. One of a prime minister who goes and tries to hard sell India and welcomes investors to India, and the other is of a minister who is trying to scuttle an investigation that many of us believe was in the interest of India.
Yeah, what really prompted me was there was this tweet from the official handle of Rahul Gandhi, in which it was a particularly nasty tweet because the Prime Minister of the country was abroad. He was attending an important global conference. He was presenting the India story. And moments after he finishes his speech, there is this tweet by the official handle of Rahul Gandhi, which really was uncalled for. And I don't want to go into the details of what he had appended to that tweet, but that is what prompted me to respond to him and say that here is a prime minister who goes to Davos to sell the India story. And back in 1992, there was a Congress minister who traveled to Davos for the same conference, where he surreptitiously met the Swiss foreign minister and handed over a note saying that all investigations, and at that time, the courts in India had issued letters rogatory to the Swiss authorities seeking documents from Swiss banks because the bribe money had been cycled through or routed through Swiss accounts. And we needed those documents. Then letters rogatories had been issued, and the Swiss were acting on it. At that point, here is this Congress minister who goes to Davos and meets the Swiss foreign minister and tells him that please do not proceed with the investigation any further, stop the letters rogatory process, and we don't want to get to the bottom of it. Now, who authorized him? Who handed over that memorandum to him still remains a secret. I mean, nobody really knows. Prime Minister Narasimha Rao made an official statement both outside and inside Parliament saying that he was taken by surprise. He was totally unaware of it. He did not know what his minister was up to. So obviously somebody had handed over that memorandum to him. And it was really a shameful thing to do. They can't deny it because what the Swiss did, and the Swiss are definitely far better at handling corruption cases than us. So the Swiss foreign minister dutifully handed it over to the judicial process over there. And they put out that memorandum. And I think Chitra Subramaniam was the first person to get a copy of it. And she promptly put out a story in the Indian media on what was attempted. So credit for that goes to Chitra Subramaniam. As you said, that people of my generation would remember it. Public memory is short; people forget. But this is something which I think it was a self-goal by the official handle of Rahul Gandhi. He just revived one part of the Bofors story which people had forgotten about.
Indeed, stay with us, Kanchan Gupta. Sumit Chaturvedi, you've been speaking to people from various backgrounds, CEOs, film stars, people on the streets in Davos. What has been the reaction like? How do they see India? What is the sentiment? And we're comparing two visits 26 years apart, where one minister, Congress minister, goes and tries to tell the Swiss government in so many words, stop investigation into the Davos case because it is affecting my government. And here is a prime minister who goes and says, come and invest in India.
Well, Palki, there's optimism all around here. We spoke to a number of CEOs, even head of states, and everybody told us the same thing, that India's presence this time is far better than earlier years. Definitely it was led by PM Modi himself, but there's we can say that optimism all around here. CEOs are much kicked about, somebody like PM Modi himself coming here, talking to the whole world, giving a message that we are here, we have arrived. It's our position in the world which we deserve and should be given to us. And he actually shared the stage with the other big leaders, including the people who will be attending here will be US President Trump, Angela Merkel. She spoke today. So he is finally positioning India as a big global power at a time when there's so much of optimism around India here in Davos. So we spoke to CEOs. CEOs were really optimistic. Global CEOs, they were also confident that now India has opened its doors once again to foreign companies, and companies will be able to will be coming with their investments. So it is really a big optimism and environment of optimism about India here in Davos, as we could see here.
Right, Sumit. And I want to go back to that memorandum and relevant portions which were reproduced in a judgment about 10 years back, and I'm quoting, this request is based on allegations of briberies in the Bofors transaction. These are the words, this is the letter that Mr. Solanki handed over to his Swiss counterpart. The inquiry opened in India led to several proceedings in India where the validity and legality of the request for mutual assistance has been challenged in the court. Until a final decision is issued by Indian courts on the issue, no further steps should be taken in Switzerland in this matter. Kanchan Gupta, Mr. Solanki has had to tell many lies to cover up one. He says this was a courtesy call. Then he goes on to say that I just gave details of the court cases that were going on in India. But if you glance through what the memorandum said, he basically said it's affecting my government and please ensure that no further investigation takes place until we come up with something else. What does mutual assistance really mean in a case like this?
No, the mutual assistance part of it was that because there were no legal arrangements in place, we are talking of the 1990s, and the Swiss banking industry was still protected and shielded from public scrutiny. So we needed mutual assistance with the Swiss authorities to get to the bottom of particular Swiss bank accounts. We knew of the accounts, we knew the account numbers, but we needed the details. We had documents regarding those accounts, including a document which mentioned that two words, the Gandhi trustee. So somebody was operating that account as a Gandhi trustee. Now this is this is all there in the documents. I am not sort of interpolating or adding anything or subtracting anything. I beg to differ with you. I don't think his case was that this is affecting my government. He was not representing the government point of view. He was representing an individual's point of view or a group of individuals' point of view. So to say that he would have pleaded that this is affecting my government would be wrong. What he essentially tried to make out over there was that the entire process of mutual assistance has been challenged in the courts of law in India, and of course it was challenged by the beneficiaries or who were the assumed beneficiaries of the Bofors bribery case, and he wanted those challenges, the process of challenges and appeals to be over before the Swiss got into action. Now that is not how investigations work. The investigation was essentially aimed at two levels. One, we had the Swedes investigating into whether bribes were paid. That was the Swedish part of the investigation, and the second part was the Swiss investigation. In Switzerland, we were investigating what happened to the money that was paid. What was the money route? What was the money trail?
Right.
And that was essential to trace not only trace how the bribe was paid and how it traveled, but also to find out who were the beneficiaries. So Mr. Solanki, when he went and met the Swiss foreign minister, his aim was not to defend his government or save his government. His aim was to save and protect the beneficiaries of the Bofors scandal. So it is very clear. And he had to resign. I mean, in those days, India was slightly more outraged than it is today about cases of bribery. Mr. Solanki had to resign, and he had to resign and go in shame.
Indeed. And here's why I mentioned the government. This is on page 5th of the judgment from the Delhi High Court of 11th November 2014. And I'm quoting again. Although an inquiry took place in India, such allegations could not be proven. And it has been said that the request for mutual assistance was based on political reasons. These allegations caused the fall of Mr. Gandhi's government, although nothing could be established. So he was speaking about the previous government. But thanks very much, Kanchan Gupta and Sumit Chaturvedi, for joining us.